Sometimes it's very important to look at the gear that you already have. One piece of gear that I have that I feel like I've neglected since I bought all these new lenses is my original Canon 18-135mm. Now, for those of you that don't know, that was one of the kit lens options you could get. It was actually the first lens that I got with my new 70D back in 2016. And for like the first year of YouTube, it was the only lens that I used. But I very quickly changed that up when I got the 10-18mm and my 24mm prime lens. And that was because the weight of this lens and, some of the quality wasn't what I actually wanted. Having that 10-18mm range of view, here we're shooting at 18 and I'm having to use my Joby pod to really kind of get that depth. Whereas I can just hold the camera itself with the 10-18mm and get basically the same look as this and not have to strain. And you can probably see a lot of that in the camera shake. But in actuality, how well does this lens hold up for video? Is it good? Is it worth keeping? Is it worth buying if you don't already have it? Well, let's take a look at it. So let's talk really quickly about the footage that you just saw. That was all shot on the Canon 18-135mm lens. The majority of the shots were shot at 18mm. I had my camera settings on my 70D set to 24 frames per second. I shot everything in 1080p, and I did have it on my Zhiyun Crane gimbal. And the reason is because I wanted the shots to be as smooth and as sharp as possible so you could really see the capabilities that this lens can hit. I did record a bunch of video clips from yesterday. I'll show you some of those, but I didn't want those video clips to really signify this lens because A, I shot at a really bad time of day. This was between like 1 and 2 or a little after 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's when the sun is up really high, super bright, everything's contrasty, and I thought the footage looked like crap. And the lens is way more capable than that, and I didn't want to show you bad footage of the lens when it actually could do some really good stuff. Now, you can handhold the lens, as you could see in the last clip where I'm kind of showing this little log thing here to show you the zoom capabilities of the lens. All that was handheld. I was just very steady. I had no kind of reinforcement from a neck strap or anything like that. So there is internal stabilization in this lens, which is something fantastic about it. Now, one thing I do like about this lens versus my 10-18 is I can get an aperture value of 3.5, which is just a little bit better than that 4.5 that the other lens gets. And, it's not a huge difference, but you can see a difference. Now, one other thing about this lens that's super cool where you do have that crazy telephoto look is you can actually use your telephotoness to kind of blur out backgrounds. And you can see here that the background's not as blurry as you'd get with, say, a really wide open aperture, but when you start to zoom in a lens, you're going to notice that background just kind of falls off. And that was another reason that I filmed that particular log the way that I did, is so that way you could really see how that fall off happens. So just because you don't have a wide open aperture of 1.4, 1.8, 2.0, 2.8, or any of those things, you can use a telephoto lens to get more of a shallow depth of field. With this particular lens at 135mm, if you're going to zoom in that far, you're probably going to have to put the camera a decent amount of way away from the subject and probably use like a lapel microphone or something to capture audio if that's what you're going for. And I will also say, the more you zoom in with this particular lens, the more shaky the footage does seem to get. So keep that in mind as well, that when you're zooming in that far, if you're going to be hand holding, it's probably not wise to follow someone or be moving the camera around a lot. But overall, I think the image quality is super sharp. You have a ton of view options to do with this. I mean, again, this is 18-135, so essentially this is a pretty decent wide angle lens up to a super telephoto lens, so you have a lot of variety there. Now, with taking photographs, this lens is amazing. You could take some very high quality portraits with it, especially if you use that zoom factor and you really zoom in to kind of crush the subject and background in together, have that nice little fall off. And then 2, it's good for landscapes and wildlife. I mean, there's a ton of reasons you can use this lens. So my overall impressions of this particular lens is it is fantastic for doing video and other things like that. Now for vlogging, it may not be the best option because this thing on your camera body, it is super heavy, especially considering you have to add like a Joby or some other type of system to really hold it and get it out there, because 18 millimeters isn't super tight, but right now my camera is farther than arm's length away from me to get this kind of a view. So if this is something you're looking for, the 10 to 18 millimeter is still a better option for kind of run and gun on the go vlogging. So if you've got it in your camera bag and haven't used it in a while, pull that thing out, dust off the lens a little bit, and start using it. But pretty much sums up today's video. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like. Subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more content like this. And as always, be sure to create something new today.